Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Howard. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You know, here's the thing. I've never presumed to be a journalist, and I don't advertise myself as such, but for some reason lately people have been interested in getting interviewed on the show, which is very flattering to us, but at the same time we're ill-equipped for it. So I'm going to do the best I can to put on my journalist hat today. Okay. I know that we already did an interview with Hopkins, another candidate for sheriff, and that now we have an opportunity to interview as well, and this is really exciting for me. So I'm just going to run through the basic battery of questions, and we'll just kind of get right down to it if you're ready. Why are you running for sheriff of Wake County?
Well, there was a need. I seen a need as I watched Sheriff Harrison lose last year, and I actually worked with Gerald Baker on the east side of the county.
Okay.
So as I seen the progress happening in the sheriff's office, and I seen some of my good friends lose their jobs, and you know, sometimes that happens, but I seen that trouble was brewing.
Sure.
Okay, and this was prior to the situation in last summer. Last summer, I actually just tipped the scale, and they said that I felt like I needed to step up at that point, you know, and everybody's have a calling to serve, you know, and you have to have a servant heart. So I just felt the need to step up because the work wasn't getting done, and I felt like we were going to be more and more in danger if we allowed somebody with those particular agendas run the sheriff's office. So as you can see, I was right.
Well, unfortunately, I've experienced it firsthand in myself as working for the sheriff's department, no longer. But why don't you give people a little background on your work history so that they understand the context? As I understand it, you were a detective.
So originally, my work history started long before even law enforcement. So like I said, you have to have a servant heart. And so when I got out of high school and I went to college, I seen that college wasn't the best for me. So I decided to join the military. And not only did I join the military, I actually wanted to experience some, I guess my parents always said you wanted to live on the wild side. So I started jumping out of airplanes. I went to the 82nd Airborne. Then, you know, knees got a little bad jumping out of them airplanes. You know,
that happens every time.
Yeah, it happens every time.
Never met a paratrooper with a good knees or good back.
Yeah, so, you know, at that point they decided that I tried to stay in, and I became Patriot missile operator and being involved in a Patriot missile, dealing with the Scuds and all of that. And that was real important. And so as I continued on with my service, I said, well, you know, I need to go back and serve my community. And so immediately after leaving the military, I joined the police force, and I went to Zebulon. Yeah.
Okay, so you joined Zebulon Police Force, and that's where you served the majority of your time as an officer?
I am still there.
Okay.
And so I went from regular officer to a supervised sergeant, and then back in 2006, and then got promoted to first sergeant in 2015. And now I am a detective sergeant over major crimes. So I supervise all major crimes in the whole jurisdiction.
So you're at a position in your career where you're kind of approaching retirement, or at least the option to retire. Why move back into the fray in especially a political position, and especially a area as contested and large as Wake County, when you've had this nice career in a smaller, more maybe convivial environment?
You know, so you're exactly right. Why would I do that? And as I looked, the safety, you know, apparently, you know, there is some apparent dangers that I can see forward. And I noticed that we would have some issues down the road. So I got a grandchild on the way, you know, and I have ideas and innovation to make it safer for not just this generation and generations to come. So I felt like I took the need to step out there on faith and go and step up and do the job. And
okay. Well, I mean, Wake County is one of the largest and also one of the wealthiest counties in North Carolina. However, we're suffering from severe staffing shortages and a severe budgetary issue. How do you plan to alleviate those concerns? So
the staffing issues are you want to that's a three-pronged situation. You want to try to deal with the staffing issues because the staffing issues come from the leadership. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you have bad leaders, you'll have bad staffing issues. The way you counteract bad staffing issues is you try to show the leaders how you want to lead. And the only way that you can show them how you want to lead is you have to have input from the community. That's where it starts from. You got to have input from the community. You have to have what kind of deputy do you want? what kind of individuals do you want at the sheriff's office? Some people are majorly afraid of like hiring and recruiting directly from the military, but they're already structured, and I don't mind doing that. And I also want to recruit from faith-based ministry and all of those things, and you have to come up with ideas, collective ideas to do that. And as well as I want to have the idea of, they have the kids come in and get their internship done at the sheriff's office. But why not have them come in every year? Not just 1 year, every year. And you select several different individuals to come in, and you prioritize, and not just the summer, you give them opportunities to come back. And that will stop the indoctrination at the college level. You can start, and you can get them as a freshman. By the time they're a senior, they're ready to. They already know the sheriff's office, and they're ready to join in. And I have to come up with incentives to pay these people. Pay is a big problem.
We're not naturally, yeah.
Yeah, naturally. So you got to get the good qualified individuals, and you got to seek them. And if you don't come up with collective ideas and innovation, you're not going to get those people.
So let me see if I can narrow this down just for the viewers' sake. What would you say your three prongs are, just succinctly?
Just simply military, faith-based, and the colleges.
Now, as I understand it, and this is not necessarily like gospel or anything, but from talking to lots of law enforcement over the years and training them myself as a contractor, one of the common things that they would complain about is that if you were an MP in the military, it actually made your chances harder of getting into law enforcement, not easier, despite what they had been told by their recruiters. Do you believe that's true or no?
It used to be. I believe Governor Pat McCrory signed a bill several years ago when he was a governor, and it made it simply easier to come in and transfer over. But the thing is, you have to recruit there. You have to start there, and you have to get those guys engaged and make them understand that, look, this is a family. We're going to treat you like a family. We're going to treat you just like the military, structured, but you're going to have that family atmosphere. Some guys have a hard time of transferring over or coming from that military and that strict environment to a less stricter environment, and you have to work with them to get them there. But it's all possible. It's all possible. Me being an individual that have trained hundreds of people throughout my 20 plus years of it's been simple for me. But some other agency leaders don't see it that way because maybe they don't have the experience or they hadn't done it before.
Why do you feel that prior administrations or prior sheriffs have been avoidant or reluctant to recruit MPs?
I think they've been reluctant because the conflict of federal and state law. Okay, I think there's a conflict in federal law. MPs enforce federal regulations on
because it's military, right?
Right, and I think that they feel like the conflict it could be conflicting to the MP learning a new way the state runs the situation.
So basically, they don't want to have to untrain them and retrain
them.
Okay,
and that fear is not good. Because, I just actually, to be I just completed instructor school. So as a sheriff, I want to instruct as well.
Okay.
So I want to step out on the lines and actually fill those voids of where I think they are and my administration can follow. You understand? So
Sure.
That is why I say, maybe that's why they're reluctant, and it could be. I don't know, but, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Okay. Well, one of the biggest issues that I saw was because I worked in the jail. I was a detention officer. I went through that program. I wore the black uniform.
Right.
And the jail's a mess. I won't rant about it right now, but given the state of the jail, and since that's one of the primary responsibilities and concerns of a sheriff in any elected district, what do you plan to do to turn that situation around?
So first of all, you got to get the jail staff incentives. Okay, the incentive to be there and want to be there, and it's to me, I looked at it from the outside in, but I can tell you, it was like a us against them mentality, and they may, you shouldn't. That should never be in your administration. So my plan to fix the problem is to allow dual certification, meaning everybody is a deputy. Okay, and that will allow the jail staff to have some weight into what's going on. They have the same weight as the deputies.
Well, just to clarify for the audience, because not everybody's aware of this, I wasn't even aware of it until I actually applied. In North Carolina, or at least in Wake County, there is two separate tracks. So when you go to the Sheriff's Academy in Wake County to become a deputy, you have to either apply as a deputy to become a road officer, or you have to become a detention officer. One program is much shorter than the other, 6 weeks as opposed to 6 months. And depending on which one you take, will determine your status as an officer in this county. Now, not every county does this. Most sheriff's departments actually use a program where the two are combined, where you simply become a sheriff's deputy. You may work in a jail as sort of a trial period for a probationary period of anywhere from 9 months to 2 years on average. And then you get out on the road and become like a typical officer with a star on your chest. In North Carolina, at least in Wake County, that's different. We have a two-tiered system, and this creates a sort of black-clad uniform, gray uniform sort of divide. And that's what we're talking about for those of you who aren't familiar. So anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. No division, no us against them, no one better than the other. And that's my main goal. And I know that it's happening as we speak right now in Nash County. They're doing the same thing. So I know this is possible. It's only 5 extra weeks. It's 120 hours. Usually you do 6 weeks, 6 to 8 week program with the jail staff. Well, I'm sending everybody to BLET. I want to integrate the system and let all of us have the same weight. And I believe that would give them incentives to stay, and also give them incentives to work hard, to go to the road or do what they want to do, work in the jail, and the guys that get burned out on the road, because it happens. It happens.
Well, I know that one of my personal issues is what caused me to quit after about 3 years of working in the detention category was that I originally came in with the notion of becoming a deputy on the road. And as soon as I passed through the academy and I was shaking hands with Donnie, the next day he was out and Baker was in, and Baker decided to put the kibosh on that option. He said, if you're on detention side, you got to stay there minimum of 3 years before you can even consider applying. Because the idea was he was trying to make up for the staff shortages in the jail by essentially holding us hostage and keep it from becoming a revolving door. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. So would that be a policy that you would reverse by applying this everybody down the same road standard? So
that policy would be reversed immediately. I'll give them the option. I'll start with the command staff. Will have to be jail certified. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So that's how you start the process. Everybody has to understand everybody's job. No one person in that sheriff's office should be important. We should all be a team. There shouldn't be a dark cloud on one side or the other. Directors shouldn't be arguing. All those things shouldn't happen. If you make everybody the same, you can't have that thing happen. Situations are, and I feel like that would incentivize the recruitment process into the jail staff, and people understand that, hey, I don't have to be in the jail my whole career. Not only that, it gives them an incentive. They get separation pay. I don't know if you want to explain to the viewers what the separation pay is, but the deputies get separation once they retire. So they get an extra couple $1,000s in their check.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, all the way up to their 62, which is well. That's
but detention
really
officers do not.
But detention officers do not. Simply because of the fact that they don't hold the same title, and that's just not fair. So I feel like that would be an incentive for everybody.
You know, there's an interesting paradigm of sort of like you said, an us versus them. There's definitely a divide between the road deputies and the detention officers, and it's not just like, you know, the blacks versus the grays, you know, with the uniforms, and it's not like, oh, our fraternity versus your fraternity. There's a distinct lack of respect that comes from the road deputies when they look down upon the detention officers. They often describe them as stupid, slovenly, lazy, corrupt, or even evil. And I think that part of that is actually warranted based on my first personal experience, and also part of it is the way that the whole system is structured. And I think that there is a serious problem with the way that the entire county is run if you're creating sort of a dual class of law enforcement officers where you have sort of these vilified folks that have to work in the jail, where they actually have more likelihood of going hands-on, far more potential for violence than even a road deputy does. Now, yes, we're not going to be confronted with firearms as often or all the variabilities of real life, but statistics prove that you will go hands-on far more in an environment where all the people have been detained because of they've potentially committed a crime versus out in the real world where they may or may not. So, you know, it's one of those things where I always described it as I felt like the system was backward, that the jail should have the best people and the road should have the people that can improve.
Yeah.
You know,
and that may be so. And the thing is, to gauge and overhaul the system, you have to get to the root of the problem. And I've seen it, I've done it, I've dealt with it. I've seen the situations. why wouldn't you respect the person that's taking the person that you dealt with for several hours, cursing at you, yelling at you, throwing something at you, and they're taking custody of that person for you, and they're going to deal with that person for you. Why wouldn't you treat them with respect? I don't understand that answer, but I feel like if you make them all the same, we're all the same. No one is better than the other, and that's how I apply my strategy to fixing that issue.
Fair enough. So let's change tacks a little bit and discuss some other topics.
Okay.
Right now, you've seen my show, so you know my opinions on a lot of things, and you know what we talk about. Do you believe that America is a systemically racist country?
No. And I feel appalled sometimes when I look at the TV and I see what I see on TV. It makes absolutely no sense to tell your neighbor who may be friends with somebody else and tell them that they're racist simply because they identify with somebody else that is a friend. It's just stupid. Excuse my language. I have to be careful what I say. But
I don't.
I think it's ridiculous. I grew up in an area where my family was all multicolors. I have Hispanics in my family, white, black, green, purple. It doesn't matter. And that would be like me telling my cousin, you're a racist. And he's Caucasian. Right. That's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion. Now, America was built on certain issues, but those issues they should not dictate where we're going and where we're headed. That's the past. You learn from the past.
So what role, if any, should race play in policy and procedure when it comes to law enforcement?
It shouldn't play any role. You should look at what the policy is and what the procedure is and what the officer did or did not do. Period. You always my mode of giving discipline is you take the name away from the discipline. If you take the name away from it, you have just the discipline and the issue. You take the name away from it, the name doesn't matter, the person doesn't matter. It's just the issue and the problem, and you fix it.
However, society will try its darnest to make sure that name or the identity of the perpetrator or the officer is headlined. Okay. One of the things we often see is that if there is a black perpetrator and they say they get roughed up or shot in the middle of a violent arrest, the media will be all over it if the officer is of a different race than them. However, if the situation is reversed, it will often be ignored by the mainstream media and maybe only reported locally briefly. Right. When you see these types of things happen and you see a sort of a call for cancellation, I'll describe it as, or the media buzzing your phones up and blowing you up asking for a response, how will you respond in defense of your officers if they have followed policy and procedure?
Well, it's simply that. You follow policy and procedure. You discuss the situation, the issue. The race doesn't play a factor ever. No sheriff or no individual will hire somebody that's apparently racist. Nobody woke up in the morning and said, "Hey, I'm racist today," or and that's just some of those things that are put out in mainstream media. It's not correct. I have a way to also combat that as well, because I have a friend that has a media company, and so he's going to start posting media the truth about Wake County. So when you have some of those things that are sound bites that are cut,
sure,
those issues that we have sometimes, it's not in all contexts. I have somebody that's going to help me get that out to make sure that the public knows the content of it. I often watch Sheriff Wayne from Brevard County, Wayne Ivey. He's great with coming and stepping out in front of the problem and telling you exactly what his deputies have done.
Okay.
And that is one thing that I feel is necessary right now in law enforcement today.
So a lot of transparency, obviously making sure that you have a press release, carefully managed and supervised content that you can put out there to give people the whole truth about the situation.
AmericaHub.com.
AmericaHub.com. What's this?
Yeah, that's a news media, and that's somewhere where if the information is not getting out correctly by our mainstream media, like they always do, the content is cut. I have an obligation to report to them, and they report accurately. And so when you have that type of situation and you're involved in it, it gives the viewers the truth, not just what they want to know. So.
All right. One of the things that I know that a lot of people are very concerned about is losing their jobs over vaccine mandates. What will be your policy on masks, the actual vaccines, and their requirements? Will you require officers to be vaccinated in order to continue their employment, so forth?
So that's just absolutely crazy. So mask mandates, no mask mandates. The fact of the matter is, of course, we have to take care of the detention area, and that's normal. But vaccines, no vaccine mandates. It's just unconstitutional, and you have to step up in front of it. The sheriff's office, the sheriff, is the person in between that stands for the Constitution. He's your leader. He's the guy that you vote to say, "Hey, federal government, you're infringing on my rights.
Agreed.
Stop." And that's simply the only person that they really can't control. They're already trying to control our lieutenant governor through all of the issues and all of that. That is a guy that can stand out there and say, no, that's it. You're infringing on the rights of the people who I serve, who voted me in. Enough is enough. And so, yes, no, they will not be I will not require those guys to be vaccinated. It'll be their choice. Now, do I want to take care of some of the guys? If their health is their health. It's not mine. But yes, I would talk to them and say, hey, do you want to take it? I hadn't even taken a vaccine. So
I'm not vaccinated either. I have no intention of doing it.
And I don't have any intention on doing it as well. So no, why would I force something on somebody that I hadn't done myself?
Okay. Well, this is a big issue for a lot of people, so people want to know where they stand on this.
Right.
Now, many officers across the country, Wake County included, they believe that their administrations are against them. You mentioned earlier, there's that us versus them mentality, and they also believe the public's against them. I believe that right now they're in the worst possible position in terms of the public crosshairs, because not only is the left media always kind of targeting police, but you now have people like me who are starting to doubt them and view them as Praetorians because they're enforcing these unconstitutional mandates. You see things like Australia, you see Britain, Germany, and you start to see places in blue cities where you're getting people declined health care. They can't go into hospitals if they don't have their QR code. Obviously, you said you wouldn't force your officers to get vaccinated, so I would assume that should these overreaches start to happen in your community.
Once again, that's like I said, the sheriff is he's a responsible agent and he sets the tone. And if you just bow down to tyrannical ideas and unconstitutional ideas, then you'll bow down to anything. Once you step over that line, you've already stepped over it. So, that's the priority of the sheriff, is to make sure that people have their rights. Period. Whether they want to or not, they have the right to do it, and that's where I stand.
Okay. During my tenure as a detention officer for Wake County Sheriff's Department, my boss, Sheriff Baker, sent a mass email to both the deputies and the detention side, in which he, and I'm paraphrasing, described us as part of the problem, and that America was systemically racist, and that we all needed to band together to improve and be better. What's your response to that? Well,
first of all, even to come out of your and send an email out like that, you didn't want any employees. You inherently just destroyed your program. You destroyed your office. You destroyed what the values of each and individual person worked hard to get. That would be so beyond belief that he actually done that. I'm very surprised, but I'm not surprised. Because systemically, maybe he was told as a child, this is what's holding you back. This guy here or that guy there. I don't know what he was told. I can tell you that that's not my idea of life. That's not who I am as a person. That's not who I identify with individually, outside of work, inside of work, no matter where I'm at. I enjoy people of all races. So I don't see that, and I'm very surprised he wrote something like that. And it would have been good to put on WRL.
Probably would have gotten sued. But, and again, they'll just consider it anecdotal, or they'll just try to shut me down if they really if they really want to make a beef about it, though. I'll be happy to go toe-to-toe with you.
Yeah,
the other question I wanted to ask you was, we had the Summer of Love. This is how Z and I met. This is part of kind of why the show started.
Okay.
In 2019, riots and Antifa. I remember she and I sitting outside of the GOP office smoking a cigar, and they all came up and calling us scumbags and other fun things. Should BLM or Antifa decide to go ham again, which they likely will, in Wake County and cause property destruction, try to pull down statues, vandalize, threaten businesses, throw things through windows, attack people and intimidate, what will be your initial response?
First of all, my initial response is it's not going to happen. It's not welcome in my county, and it's not going to happen. I take it as my county, as I'm the sheriff right now. It's not going to happen. Don't come in my county with it. Understand that I will arrest you. Understand that I always refrain from saying this, but I'm going to say it. I'm brass tacks. And I'll tell you like it is. I will come in the middle of the night and snatch you out of the bed. You will not riot in the county.
Now, we had a similar response from Baker when questioned about the violence in the city, and he made a similar response. However, working in the jail, I got to see the reality, which was that they hauled in a bunch of people that they considered were the ringleaders. They pulled them in. They put them in waiting rooms. They had them sitting down in the lobby in the holding cells. They brought them before the magistrate, and then the magistrates immediately lowered their bonds to something that was easy for them to achieve through their little collected pro bono lawyer groups, and they were all out of there within 24 hours and never spent any time in jail. And this is often true around the country, which leads a lot of people on my side of the fence to conspiratorially believe that a lot of activist judges and magistrates are in league with, or at least sympathetic to the cause of BLM and Antifa individuals, and make their bails low enough to ensure that they always get out. Do you have any opinion on that?
So my opinion on that is just it's wrong. It's definitely wrong, and it devalues the law enforcement part of your job. It does. It makes it diminishes it. But however, where there's always a response, there's a response to everything that happens. If you have an action, there's a reaction, and my reaction would be a little different. Yes, of course. I would seek to look to find out which individuals are violating the law and arrest them again. However, if the magistrates let them out, they are putting themselves in a situation where they're going to get sued, period. And if I have to come up with get my lawyers involved, I will. The thing is, we have to really be careful of what we do as law enforcement and as magistrates and lawyers and et cetera, because you can very well let that individual out, and that individual can go and hurt somebody really bad. And then you're directly responsible for some of those issues. And so you have to be careful now, because the door is open. Once you open the door, it's open.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Last topic. What's your opinion of the Second Amendment and constitutional carry in Wake County?
So, of course you're going to hear that from every candidate.
Sure.
Second Amendment. Yes, I'm for Second Amendment. Yeah, of course I am. I am absolutely, apparently, for Second Amendment. Actually, I'm for the fact that you can go directly to whoever you're buying it, because it's the same check. I've said that with when we were doing I think the libertarian type of party, we were downtown. And I said the same thing. Like, why would you do the same checks twice? It doesn't make sense.
Sure.
Go do the check, make sure they're good, then the weapon is fine. And that is your natural right. That wasn't in the Constitution. Your Second Amendment is just as important as your Fourth Amendment or your First Amendment. There's no difference. If you try to differentiate it, then you're saying the Fourth Amendment is more important than the Second, and that makes no sense in the Constitution, because they didn't write it. They wrote it exactly the way it should be.
Well, you don't have a fourth if you don't have a second, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Right? Now, do you support things like open carry? I know that a lot of people have a negative stigma about it. Z and I tend to do it on purpose for multiple reasons.
And you should.
And would this be something that would be a problem under your administration with your deputies?
It's not. And once again, you have to take an active role in the leadership in the training of your deputies. You have to take an active role. You remember I told you I went to instructor school.
Right.
So I want to take an active role. How do I take the active role? My citizens allow me to take an active role into making sure that they're treated with respect, and that's what I'm going to enforce, the respect of what my citizens want.
Well, what's your opinion on red flag laws?
Red flag laws, I don't want you, and let's that's a good topic. I don't want you to say, hey, I don't like you, so I'm going to go downtown and swear a warrant out, or swear in front of the magistrate, which is a lie, could be an absolute lie, and they come and take my guns. I'm not coming to take your guns. That's not sufficient enough. Now, if you had family members that actually lived in the house and the medication and things were going bad, of course, I don't mind helping and assisting, but that's just to hold them, not to take them. But I don't believe in the red flag law. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it's just another way to infringe on the rights that apparently they don't want us to have. If we keep allowing them, like I said, it's a slippery slope.
I agree. Things like depression getting included in the list, or, being able have a doctor being able to tell you, like, do you have any guns in the house when they're trying to diagnose something that's a medical issue? These are things that I think that are far beyond what the founders intended as far as constitutional carry, as far as the scope of firearm ownership. Well, we're going to wrap this up. I just have a couple questions for you and just kind of give you your final pitch to the audience.
Okay.
There's a fair sized pool of candidates running for sheriff this time. I think a lot of people felt that there was a need or an opportunity. What are you bringing to the table that's unique? Why should people pull the lever for Howard?
So, of course, I have a plethora of experience. I was a substitute teacher. So I invested. I did the work already. So, sometimes when you're applying for a job, you have an interview. This is what we're doing. We're doing a job interview. I've already did the work. I've already did the work prior to being a selection process. Some people just don't know the work you've done already. See, that's the issue. So I've already been a substitute teacher, so I was involved with the children. I've already done youth programs, been a director. I own my own business on the side. I am a instructor, so I've been in law enforcement 20 plus years. I could go on and it's be like, wah, but I've already done the work. The thing is, what's the brass tacks about me? Innovation. And I'm willing to sit at the round table. No one is not welcome at the round table. And I always say this, it's not about the Democratic or Republican Party. It's about your DNA. It's who you are as an individual. Your DNA should say, hey, I am this guy, and this is what I've done. This is who I am. And in my servicing of heart, because I got a service heart. We all do. You've done it 10 years. You had a service of heart. You wanted to make sure the community was safe. That's got to be in your DNA. It's got to be the most important thing about you. It's got to be the service of taking care of people and listening to people. And if you can't do that, and you can't be held accountable, get out of the race. You don't belong in this. Because 4 years from now, if we're not paying attention, we're going to be in danger. Because the rules, the game is going to change. It's going to get worse and worse. And I got to make this thing safe for my grandchildren and the next generation and the next generation. That's the reason why I stepped in there. So that's what makes me different. You can say I'm motivated. I'm wired tight. That's what they call me. But I'm structured. I have an idea to fix the problems. If you're gonna come and step up to the plate, have an idea. Have some real ideas. So that's what makes me different, and I like to fall on that.
Given that Baker is the incumbent, and the incumbent usually has a certain degree of advantage in a vote, and he also has a lot of backing behind him politically and financially, how do you plan to beat him?
So, November is a good little ways away. But who I stand for and what I stand and how I present myself, that beat him a long time ago. You have to put in the work. You have to have the work done. I'm not worried about financially because the finances will come. It's what I'm going to do for this county to make it the gold star standard. That's what's important. And what am I going to do for the deputies to make them happy? Baker was worried about the deputies telling on them or talking negative about them and maybe and all of that. The thing is, if you take care of your deputies, you ain't got to worry about what they say because they're going to say everything that's good because it's always in their forefront. If you take care of your friends and your family like you've been doing for all your life, it's like not taking care of mama. Mama, it doesn't make sense. So if you take care of people, people take care of you. You can look back and some of my guys could call in now and tell you that I've trained years and years ago. They'll tell you, that guy right there, he takes care of his people. If you take care of your people, you don't have anything to worry about. That's the reason why I stepped in this race, because you're not going to hear anybody come out and say he didn't take care of his people. I took care of my people.
Well, I appreciate you and also candidate Hopkins taking the time to actually sit down and do a long-form interview about this, because I think a lot of people only get a couple of sound bites and then they have to vote for a no-name they don't truly understand, and they have to go off minimum information. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You.
I wish you the best of luck in your race. Hope it goes well. And thank you for being on Two Americas with us.
This is awesome. Thank you.